Welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans for Ohio State fans, which you can now get on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and SoundCloud. From San Francisco, I'm your host, Zach Moore. This evening, I'm very happy to be joined in the Mountain Time Zone by Paige and in the Eastern Time Zone by Tim and Matt. A quick South Stands disclaimer, we are not trained media professionals. We are not former players or coaches. We do not have access to current Ohio State players and coaches. We are Ohio State alums, rabid Buckeye fans, observers from afar who love talking Buckeye football. And we hope you'll enjoy this free-flowing conversation tonight about Ohio State's Saturday night primetime matchup on ABC with Michigan State in the Horseshoe. Just want to mention a few numbers to put this game into context, then we'll go around the horn to get some score predictions. The Buckeyes come into this matchup a pretty decisive Vegas favorite. I believe the opening line started at OSU minus 17 and has since moved to OSU minus 20. Michigan State sits at 4-1, 2-0 in Big Ten play after consecutive wins over Northwestern and Indiana. Sparty's only blemish so far this year was an ugly 10-7 home loss to Arizona State in Week 3, a game in which the Spartan offense nearly doubled the Sun Devils in total yardage but somehow could only manage 7 points. Last week, the Spartans narrowly escaped with a 40-31 win over Indiana and East Lansing, hitting a go-ahead field goal with about 5 seconds remaining, then falling on an IU lateral in the end zone on the game's final play. The Spartans come into this game tied with Texas A&M at number 25 in the AP poll. Not surprisingly, Mark D'Antonio's squad sits atop most of the major defensive statistics. 7th nationally in total defense, 4th against the run, 18th nationally in sacks, 24th in red zone defense, and 37th in passing yards allowed. That's probably because most teams just quit running on them and they just throw the whole time, so they're a little lower in that category. The Spartan D is led by senior defensive end Kenny Willekes, who comes into this game with 4 sacks, and senior linebacker Joe Bacci, who leads the team in tackles. So far this season, the Spartans have been pedestrian at best on offense. 71st nationally in total offense, 83rd in rushing offense, 44th in passing offense. As we all know, the Spartans' offense is led by senior Brian Lewerke, who seems like he's been at Michigan State for like 10 years. He's not having a bad year, 10 TD passes to only 1 INT. The problem is he's just not very accurate. He's only completing about 59% of his passes. So with all that out of the way, let's go around the horn and get some score predictions. Tim, I want to start with you. How do you see this game playing out? Why don't you give us a score prediction?
So I think we all suffer from some level of Michigan State PTSD, whether it was, 98 or even worse, 2015, which is a game that I was at, pissing rain, 40 degrees, and the last play of the game, the guy kicks a field goal and runs 100 yards, pumping his fist at the shoe. It was absolutely awful. And so, I think Michigan State is just one of those pesky teams. I mean, D'Antonio's a good coach, although I think I'll go on record right now as saying I believe will be his last season. He's not recruiting the players that he used to recruit. Michigan State has had some obviously off-the-field problems where he was the center of, along with Tom Izzo. I just don't think that they're the team that they used to be. Having said that, D'Antonio will have them ready. Mm-hmm. I expect their defense to be stout. I expect them to play really tough football for a half and give Ohio State its best half that it's had so far. So I see it at kind of 17-7 at half, but ultimately doesn't have the athletes. Lewerke is, I think, a decent quarterback, but doesn't have the weapons, and I think it ends up 42-13, probably closer than that score would indicate just because of the style of football Michigan State plays, just tough and doesn't give you an inch. And so I don't think it feels that great, but I think it's a solid victory for Ohio State against a tough team.
All right. Okay, I like it. Paige, why don't we kick it over to you? How do you see this one playing out? Give us your score prediction.
So did I miss something? I thought this was a Nebraska recap pod. What the hell? What's going on here?
You blacked that one out, pal. You blacked out that podcast.
That happened during the martini.
I didn't black it out. I was, well, my kids might listen to this. I think I was blacked out.
No, they won't.
Yeah, that's true. This isn't going to be close. I don't see how it possibly can be. I read that I think Michigan State's pretty banged up on the offensive line.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe having 3 or 4 guys not playing. So how are they going to deal with Ohio State's defensive line? If they scored 3 points, I'd be surprised. So, and they haven't, I don't think they've also scored a touchdown against Ohio State in 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
They're just terrible on offense. I think they're getting way too much benefit of the doubt. I don't think this is close at all. I'm going strong like Buckeyes. I'm going to roll with the safety again. I'm going to say 42-2 Buckeyes.
42-2 Buckeyes.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I like it. Sloaner, what do you think?
You know, you're akin to the guy who goes to roulette wheel and puts it on 00 all the time. You're just like, what are you doing with the safety pick?
It occasionally pays off, Matt. It occasionally pays off. It
does. Well, thanks for coming to Vegas, Paige. You know, the thing about their offense is going to be the key, because you could have the greatest defense in the world, but if you're constantly on the field, you're going to be fairly tired pretty quickly. So I would think, because of our defense against their offense, that offense is not going to be on the field that long. And so just how this game works, if your offense isn't on the field, that means your defense is on the field a lot. And because of the way we're going to go against them, and I think we're going to pass more than we're going to run, because they're like almost significantly better at the rush than they are the pass. So I just don't see. I see Fields. I see like 5 touchdowns easily by pass and 1 by rush and then a field goal. So I have it 45-6, because I don't think they're going to score. They're going to get, something's going to happen to where they're going to get close enough and the guy's going to kick a field goal, and he may run like 20 yards instead of 100 yards in celebration because they got on the damn scoreboard. I just don't think this team even belongs in to be a ranked team, but happily do it, happily give them this while we play them, so it can be quickly stripped away. 45-6.
45-6.
A pretty resounding victory. I don't think it will ever be in doubt. I think this team, what Paige said a couple weeks ago, when he was a little bit having more sobriety, that this team has a different kind of strut to them than I've seen in past teams. So that the PTSD that Tim's talking about, I think, is we've kind of worked our way through it.
All right. Well, before I get to my prediction, I'm going to give my father-in-law's prediction. He's just a permanent part of the pod, guys. Sorry about that. At least the prediction aspect of the pod. Ken Meyer sees this one playing out 48-17 in favor of the Buckeyes. He doesn't see this one as very close either. I see it 50-17 Ohio State. I kind of had to fudge my prediction a little bit because some of you guys were very close to my original prediction. So I'm saying I think Ohio State gets to 50. I know that's kind of a bold prediction considering that it's Michigan State and they're a good defensive team. But the last time Michigan State came into the shoe, this was 2017. That team finished 10-3, I believe, and so it was pretty good Michigan State team. And you remember we were all coming off that the loss at Iowa that season. And Tim, I believe you and I had predicted doom and gloom for Ohio State against Sparty the week after. Yep. Neither of us liked Ohio State going in that game. And Ohio State literally ran them off the field. It was never a game. 48-3 was the final of that in 2017. I think that was a better Michigan State team than the one that's coming into the shoe this Saturday. And I don't think that Ohio State team in 2017 is nearly as good as the one that we're going to see on Saturday. So I'm saying 50-17. Michigan State gets some cheap scores in the fourth quarter against some Ohio State reserves to kind of close that margin. But I don't see this one as close. I just don't think they have the skill players. I don't think Lewerke is nearly accurate enough. If you're going to beat this Ohio State defense, this Ohio State team, you're going to have to be elite at quarterback. I'm talking like peak Baker Mayfield, Phillip Rivers. You guys probably remember way back in 2003, Rivers came into the shoe. Now, NC State didn't beat us that day, but Rivers had a huge day that day and made a really good Ohio State defense look bad. That's the type of quarterback, I think, that you're going to need to have to beat this Ohio State defense, and Brian Lewerke is not that guy. So 50-17 is my prediction. And did anyone get a prediction from Mr. Plummer, by the way? Shout out to Mr. Plummer. He's bellied up at a bar somewhere in Sandusky, Ohio or something.
Yeah, he's got a little Van Hornitis going on right now.
So he's abstaining this week, I assume.
Yeah.
All right.
So he says, I don't know what this means. Buckeyes -20, so I guess he's just predicting them to cover.
That's way too conservative for Mr. Plummer.
It just sounds like someone who's getting back to his gambling way.
Right. Exactly. He's got a little bit more here, but it's about some other games, so I think we'll maybe touch on some of that stuff later. But hey, Tim, why the fuck do you think D'Antonio's going to be gone? You think he's going to quit, or you think they're going to fire him? I don't see that happening at all.
No, I don't think they're going to fire him. I think that if they were going to do that, I think they would have done that already. I just kind of feel like he's seen the best that program's going to be under him. He's not getting the recruits. We've seen the emergence of Penn State really as kind of the next best team in the East. Michigan is down, and he's kind of down there with Michigan State. You can also argue that Wisconsin, could arguably be the second best team in the Big Ten. So like I just see his star falling, and he's had some health issues over the years and been there a long time, and I could just see him hanging it up at the end of the year and saying, I had a good run, it's been great, 58 or 60 or however old he is, and it's been my time. Because it's definitely a program that is not what it was, say, in, 13 when they beat us in the Big Ten championship game, when we had a tight end that couldn't throw a block. That was the height of his program. He went to the Rose Bowl. He won the Big Ten. It was a big deal. Yeah. And it just hasn't really been the same since then. So I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling like, and then this year, if you kind of look at their record this year too, right? So they had an inexplicable loss at home to ASU where they only scored 7 points. But then they come back the next week on the road and beat Northwestern, who gave Wisconsin a really good game at home. And then they have Indiana back at home, and they give up 31 points to that offense, still win, but, they're just kind of all over the place. And I don't know, I just have a sense that maybe he's not all there, kind of like we experienced last year with Meyer, and maybe thinking about what his next move is.
Interesting. Well, I would certainly agree with you on the personnel at Michigan State. Well, first of all, D'Antonio, he had Kirk Cousins, if I'm not mistaken, followed by Connor Cook back-to-back. And that was huge because those guys could obviously both play. And Michigan State took advantage in 2011 of, I guess it was Wisconsin who ended up winning the conference that year. But, Ohio State, that transitional year for Ohio State. But, yeah, I agree with you. 2011 to 2015, I think that was D'Antonio's heyday. And we just haven't seen the same level of elite talent there as he had during that 4 or 5 year stretch, particularly at quarterback. And then you had, some defensive players as well. Well, he's still getting guys who can play defensively, right? I mean, Kenny Willekes is a stud. He can, he could probably play anywhere in the Big Ten. Bocce can play. But yeah, they certainly don't have any playmakers offensively that they did during that 2011 to 2015 run.
But if you've got the problems at Michigan, wouldn't he be licking his chops a little bit?
Good point.
Because
I agree totally, Sloaner. Exactly.
Good point.
Well, I think he has been. He's been beating up on Big Brother, so to speak, and it's been great to see. And so, okay, so you're the best team in Michigan. So what?
Has that shown up? Has that shown up? Yeah, has that shown up in the recruiting rankings? I don't think that it has, right? I mean, I think Michigan is still significantly ahead of Michigan State, in terms of recruiting that area and then the states around it.
But it's not. But there's a different kind of, at Michigan State, basketball is probably bigger than football, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Point. That probably is right.
Paige, what do you think? You got any thoughts?
Yeah, it seems out of left field. The first thing I thought is exactly what Sloaner said. If the wheels do come off at Michigan, that's only going to help him, number one. Number two, it's not like they're getting 4 and 5 star guys from across the country at Michigan State anyway. I mean, they're taking probably third pick of the litter behind Ohio State, what then Michigan wants. And then, they take what's left. And I think if you're Michigan State, I mean, what are your expectations realistically? Like every third year, we want to contend for a Big Ten, title. And I think D'Antonio does that. And I just don't see him walking away. I could see them maybe firing him, but, who knows? It was an interesting call by TV, so I just wanted to dig into it. So if we're keeping score, Zach, I got what's his nuts from Michigan in the transfer protocol at the end of the year, and Gallagher's got D'Antonio retiring. Let's see who's right about that. Should we put $20 on that, Gallagher?
Yes, we should.
All right.
And for the record, I'm down 20 to you for the Rutgers cover that you had. So
that's right.
And you should be down 40 for that call.
All right. So Dylan McCaffrey in the transfer portal by the end of the year. And Tim, you're saying Mark D'Antonio will retire at the end of this season.
He will hang it up.
Hang it up. All right. Bold predictions. I love it. I got to come up with one. Sloaner, you and I have to come up with some kind of a bold prediction before the season's up.
There's some are already brewing. I just got to let them ferment a little bit more.
All right. Hey, well, listen, guys. There is one other pretty big Big Ten matchup I think we should talk about and also give a prediction. The Iowa Hawkeyes visit Ann Arbor this Saturday. I believe they're the Fox Big Noon kick. And Iowa comes into the game ranked 14th in the country, Michigan 19th. Michigan's actually a 3.5-point favorite in this one. Tim, why don't we start with you? How do you see that game playing out, and give us your score prediction?
So I think neither of these teams are very good. At the end of the day, I think they're average teams. So I think it's going to be a fairly boring game. And I think it's going to be a very uninteresting game. Having said that, there's just way too much yellow for me in the whole thing. And I think Iowa pulls it out. I think Michigan right now is such a mess, from the locker room to the coach to who's healthy and who's not. Who's getting the fingers pointed at them and who's not. I just don't see them as a team. I see them as a collection of people right now. And I do like Kirk Ferentz. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll have Iowa ready. I think they're going to view this as one of, if not their biggest game of the year, playing at the Big House. So I think Iowa will be ready, and I think they'll pull it out. I think it'll be close, but I think it's something like 27-21.
27-21 Hawkeyes in the Big House. All right. Paige, what do you think?
So before I get to that, our friend Mr. Plummer has sent me his okay.
Oh.
Buckeyes minus 20. His 5-star pick of the weekend is Tennessee plus 26.5. Don't ask me. And he likes Michigan minus 3.5. I don't know. It's a text, and I'm doing the best I can. So we can move on. This was also sponsored by Manny's Tavern in Sandusky.
We forgot to mention our faux sponsorship. Okay.
Yes.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah, our first sponsorship. I think this is the trap game so far of the season, and I think Michigan wins this game easily. I think everybody's piling on Iowa. What's Iowa done? They squeaked one by Iowa State. They beat Miami of Ohio, Middle Tennessee, and somebody else. I don't see it. And so I think, even though I'm not a huge believer in Michigan, I think old Khaki Pants pulls it together, and I think a lot of action is going to go on Iowa, and people are going to get crushed. So I like Michigan. I don't really have a score, but I think they win by at least a touchdown.
Okay.
I think they cover. Yeah, it's just 2 weeks in a row you've been on Michigan here, buddy. Just
Yeah.
pointing that
Wow, look
out.
at
Yeah. I don't know. Do we need to have an intervention here, Paige, while we're all on the line?
Well,
I think
I mean,
it's one of many interventions. That one's got to wait in line.
Mr. Sloan, what do you think?
So practically, I want Michigan to win because I want the only blemish on their record to be that Wisconsin game, which they could, all their fans could say, "Oh, we were playing an away game. We haven't found our identity yet." Blah blah blah, and then we play them and crush them. But actually, I think this game, like, they don't have any home field advantage. The Army game showed that. So this is basically a game played on neutral turf. I will give
Shot at the Michigan fans. I love it. Sorry, go ahead, Sloaner.
Yeah, I think Iowa is an under-radar team. I think, especially in the Big Ten, I think that they're going to come out and it's going to be a little bit back and forth. There's going to be a lot of yawns. There's going to be a lot of, if you turn the channel and Cobra's on, you're like, yeah, Stallone, Cobra. And that will seem like a better way of entertaining your afternoon. But I think Iowa will do enough to bring it on top. I think by a touchdown as well, 24-17.
24-17 Hawkeyes. Okay. Excellent. I said in our pod on Sunday that I thought Iowa would come out of the West as the Western Division champ. And I like Nate Stanley. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's after Adrian Martinez, I just don't think Nebraska's going to be good enough to contend. But I think Stanley's probably the second best quarterback in the division. I think he's better than anything Michigan has coming into this game. So I like Iowa's defense. They know who they are. They have an identity. I think Stanley probably is the difference. I am going to hedge just a little bit and say that if Michigan can figure out, finally identify that the fact that they have these awesome receivers, and they got a quartet of dudes who are all going to be playing in the league. They can somehow figure out how to get those guys involved in the game plan and really feature them and make them be the focal point of their offense. They could actually be a pretty dangerous team, but I don't think they're there yet. So I like Iowa 21-13 in the Big House. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be it's going to be a slugfest. But I like Iowa coming out of that game, 21-13.
Nice.
So I'm the lone Michigan.
You're the lone Michigan dissenter.
Dissenter. Here.
Is that a word?
Actually,
Defender.
Yeah.
I'm just having a look
Maybe Plummer likes him. I don't know.
There aren't a lot of other intriguing matchups around the country. I think kind of that's basically it. I think the top SEC teams all have a bye this week. I think Bama, LSU, and Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, all have a bye this week. So there's really not much to say. Oh, sorry, Georgia's playing Tennessee.
Yeah, LSU had a bye last week, I think.
Oh, did they? Okay, so maybe they are in action. All right, I stand corrected on that one. Hey, I just want to remind the listeners, you're listening to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast, which you can hear on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and SoundCloud. You can also, if you're so inclined, follow us on social media on our Twitter account. We also have what else do we have, guys? Facebook and Instagram.
Instagram.
Yes.
Yep.
And we just set up a Gmail account, the South Stands OSU at gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to pass along to us, please hit us up at that Gmail address. Hey, guys, before we wrap it up, I know it's getting late on the East Coast. Are there any other comments, anything else you'd like to mention before we shut her down?
Yeah, we need to check and make sure Chad's sober before he gets on the program on Sunday.
The Sunday pod? Okay. Yeah. All right, we'll do a little
Are you anticipating a 3-day bender?
I try not to anticipate anything with him.
Maybe we need to have a South Stands bed check on Saturday night. Make sure everyone's tucked in, Paige, I think that would apply to you after last weekend.
Yeah,
Make sure.
that would be a good idea.
Turn it back the clock. Did you peg your pants and put your hair in a ducktail as
well? No, but 49 years and I still have a hard time learning that lesson. Turning down shot of Don Julio at midnight is just a really, really bad idea. Multiple.
Yeah, those good decisions lead to more good decisions.
Like
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, like the Chardonnay, the 2 bottles of Chardonnay, which my wife Erin gave Paige a really hard time about. But that's another pod. We can do a whole other pod on that one.
Yeah, we could do a whole pod on that.
A whole pod on Paige's bad decisions. All right, hey guys, listen, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks so much for making the time, and we're gonna reconvene on Sunday morning to recap the Michigan State game.
All righty.
All right, fellas.
Thanks, boys.
Go Bucks.